Welcome to another edition of Inspired Stories, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes, how they've overcome adversity, and explore current challenges they're facing.
Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes, how they've overcome adversity, and explore current challenges they're facing. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Ben Wolf, founder and CEO of Wolf's Edge Integrators, one of the world's largest fractional COO firms. All of their fractional COOs need to have previously run companies, have a founder's spark, and know how to help visionaries execute the details of their business. Ben also wrote the first best-selling book explaining what fractional executive leadership is, how it works, and how to take advantage of the model. It's called Fractional Leadership: Landing Executive Talent You Thought Was Out of Reach. He also hosts his own podcast called Win-Win, which you should definitely check out. This is a place where successful business people share information, knowledge, and tools that members of the entrepreneurial community can immediately use in their businesses and in their lives. And before we get into the good stuff today, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to save over $900 per employee per year by implementing one of our proprietary programs. Another client is going to save over $1,200 per employee per year by implementing a patented construct that we offer. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. Okay, now back to our guest today, the CEO of Wolf's Edge Integrators, Ben. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Thank you, Anthony. Great to be here.
Yeah. So let's just start out basic. Tell us in your own words, what does Wolf's Edge Integrators do?
So Wolf's Edge Integrators, we're a team of, as you said before, executives who've owned or run businesses before, who come in and take over that number two spot in the business, right? As the partner, strategic partner to the visionary or founder, head of the company, to lead their leadership team and take them somewhere where our team members have been before. Right? People are hitting the ceiling, trying things again and again, hitting a plateau in their business because they haven't been there. They haven't done this sort of thing before. They grew up in the business. They, got here. They're not serial entrepreneurs. So, we're simply people who come in and who've grown businesses like theirs before, and take them to where they want to go because they've done it before.
And so a lot of the people who come to you, I'm guessing they're probably at a point of frustration, right? Where it's like, listen, things have kind of gone well, we've got a certain amount of growth, but I feel like I'm hitting my head against the ceiling. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know how to move past this. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. People are, at 5 million and stuck there for a few years. Like they grew, and then they hit like 5 million, or they hit 10 million, hit 13 million, and they're just like hitting the ceiling. And it's not getting past that point. As you said, they don't know what they don't know. And so we need to bring in somebody that actually has seen a business to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million and can lead them and their team, up level their team. Very often also people on their leadership team or their executive team, whatever they call it, need help, right? They've never ran a business the size that theirs is now before, or their department that the size that their company or their department is now before. And so help elevate those people, or where appropriate, replace some of those people, and help move those people to a seat where they can excel. And so, help them achieve what they want, because as you said, they haven't done it before. And so bring in somebody who has, on a fractional basis, which they may not be able to afford someone full-time of that caliber.
So it's sort of a two-pronged benefit that they get by working with you. They get the experience and the knowledge of somebody who's been there, done that before. They've helped other companies level up, and they get to do it at a fraction of the price, right?
Right.
Because
That's why they call
don't
it
have
fractional, right?
Right. That's where the name comes from. That and
Exactly.
the time commitment from the COO too. So they get to tap into this wealth of knowledge and
Yeah.
experience, and they get to save money by not having to hire somebody full time, which I'm guessing a lot of these companies can't afford to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Not at least not of someone of the caliber that they actually need. And then the goal is we look to pass the baton, typically between 9 and 18 months. You can help them up level the leadership team, accomplish some major things that they were stuck on, and then pass the baton, either elevate someone internally into that role to replace us, or help them hire someone from the outside. And who better to pick their next COO or their next integrator or whatever the title is going to be, than someone who is great at that, rather than have the business owner or other members of the leadership team try to fill that role when they're also not sure what a great candidate for that role looks like because they haven't seen it before.
I think one of the interesting things about your background, Ben, is that you didn't start out as an entrepreneur. This wasn't something you were kind of dreaming about in junior high and high school and college. You came from a corporate background as a bankruptcy restructuring attorney, and you kind of
Yes.
found the entrepreneurial bug a little bit later in life. Talk us through that path a little bit.
Yes, I recently thought of the term late onset entrepreneurship as to describe my background. And actually, the corporate bankruptcy attorney thing was not even the first thing. I mean, it's it's been a long and winding road, as they say. And but the last one before entrepreneurship was the last stop on that road was corporate restructuring attorney, a big firm in New York City. And um, I, after about 5 years at that firm, I uh, I was laid off. I mean, it was a bad time for bankruptcy. My billable hours were particularly low within our department. A very successful department, successful firm, but it was a tough time. And I spent about 5 months unemployed, which was a very scary time. Uh, and I was looking at exploring all different options. It's a I mean, it's a long story of like how it even happened, but I would say divine providence was there and ended up at this entrepreneurial business, like a startup, and very idealistic, also very tech oriented. I had no background in like running small companies or like startups, but this was pre-launch, pre-revenue, and I had the opportunity and the privilege of building most of the company. And as the first full-time employee, joining the founder, and built most of the aspects of the business. Uh, got involved in like literally like every aspect of the business, right? Just learned huge amounts just from doing, even though that was not my prior background. By the time I left that company, we were 130 people and over 100 million gross annual revenue at that point. So I just got to see it at, like a handful of people in a tiny little office, to 5 people, to 50 people, to over 100 people when I left. Learned a huge amount. We got exposed to EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, which we got the help of an EOS implementer to help us run that sort of management framework within the business. So I got a lot of experience with that. Learned huge amounts of things, and that's that's but even then I was an employee. I mean, I was in the entrepreneurial world, but I was still employee, not my own business. And it was only later on, after I left, I became COO at another place. It turned out to be a very unhealthy environment with some of the stuff going on there, and that I didn't know about before I joined. And as I left after not too long of a time, and sort of a choice, should I go back to like looking for a full-time job again? And I had heard about this concept of a fractional integrator or COO. I'd heard about it. I was like, you know what? Let me just take the leap, So I just hung up my shingle, set up a website, LinkedIn, started doing 18 calls a week, look at doing business development, and just asked around, tried to learn how to do business development because I didn't have a background in that either. And slowly that's sort of my entrance into the entrepreneurial world, starting as a solo practitioner, as a fractional COO, and then ultimately got a couple years later, got other people to join. Now I've got this great firm. I think of the honestly the greatest, fractional COOs out there. I mean, like I said before, all people that have owned or run businesses before. Uh, just truly privileged to work with these people. But
Couple of threads I want to pull at there. Let's go back to when you were unemployed for 5 months. This is something that a lot of people have gone through. Maybe some people listening are going through now. Maybe they've had the safety and security of their own company for a while and they've exited or something happened, or the safety and security of a salaried job. And now with the economy kind of in flux, now they're in a position, maybe an unfamiliar position where they're looking for something. What is the next thing? Somebody who went through that for 5 months, there, if you had gone into it knowing that it was going to be 5 months and you were going to come out and know exactly what was on the other side, there would have been some level of comfort and assurance there. Maybe you
right.
didn't love the idea it was going to be 5 months, but when you're in the middle of it, you have no idea. It's
Yeah,
the
you don't know
unknown.
when or if it's going to end at all.
It's the uncertainty of it. What are some things that help to get you through that difficult period?
Hmm. Well, that's a good question. I would say the number one thing that helped get me through that relatively sane was my wife. I think that if she had, not been as supportive or had like sort of fallen apart, like emotionally, like, just from the worry, because she's like depending on me, and that's incredibly scary for her. Like at least me, like I'm the one who could, like, I could take actions and I could be extremely busy looking to get to the next thing. She's like depending on someone else, me, to do that, right? So very, very understandable to just to be scared, like to freak out, to maybe lose confidence in her husband, right? And so the fact that she was like supportive and confident, and or at least expressed confidence, like I know you could do it, and you're doing great, and just like supporting me in that, I would say, is the biggest thing that helped me get through. There's other things, but I would say that's the biggest one. That it would have been, as hard as it would have been, and as scary as it would have been much scarier and much harder without a partner who was not only loving but also like supportive, and even more, most importantly, had belief in me, and that's very strengthening.
That's awesome. I'll raise my hand as another person who's really fortunate to have a loving and supporting partner that has really meant the world through some of the, natural ups and downs that have come along. So great to
You know
hear
that
that.
song? You know that song from The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman and his wife? Where he plays P.T. Barnum.
I don't think I do. What
It's
is it?
uh it's like it's something like a tightrope, walking the tightrope with you, like
Okay.
where things were not working out with him, and he like had all these big dreams and big ideas of, he wanted to do with the circus and all these things, and his in the musical his wife has a song where like walking the tightrope with you, that we were like playing that song at that time because it was just a song of like
That
his
was your theme
wife like
song.
supporting him. Yeah, it really was. It was like just like the wife like supporting him, believing in him, like, just the thrill of like she came from a wealthy home, but then now she's like out walking a tightrope, like you could fall either way. But it was a really nice song.
We're going to find that song and put it in the show notes. I'm curious to hear it now myself.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah,
maybe
definitely
my
check it
wife
out.
and listen to it together tonight. So the next interesting thread I want to pull at here is, so you eventually found a job. So you're coming out of that scary unemployment time, 5 months of the uncertainty, and there has to be this sense of relief, like, okay, thank goodness, now I found something. I can get my hands dirty again. I got a steady paycheck coming in. But then you found yourself in this situation where I don't know the specifics, but it was a toxic environment. It wasn't what you thought it was, and now you're in a position where you decide that rather than stay and take that steady paycheck, you're going to go back out into the unknown
Mm,
again, this
mm.
scary place that you've just come from. Talk me through kind of the thought process there.
Well, I think anybody that is thinking of taking that entrepreneurial leap, um, you know, I think needs to have some kind of plan, like, in terms of a runway. Because again, like with my job, like I had no choice. Like it was, the job disappeared. Here, like I made the election to cause the job to disappear. And so it, we had, well, one thing I could say is that I was there from the beginning of that prior company. I was there from the beginning, and I just had so much. I mean, I did everything I could to facilitate a smooth transition when I left the business I was in that I'd helped build, but it was done everything to a smooth transition. But I had a lot of institutional knowledge, right? Let's say, right? Like I'd built up most of the company, and so I just had a lot of knowledge about a lot of things. And they still needed me, so I was able to, while I was building up my business, I was able to do some consulting work and help, facilitate and accomplish and work on a bunch of projects, and just help with a bunch of things with the company that I had previously left and helped build. So I was able to get some extra income from that. Even while I was working at the job, I had done one really big consulting project that I had some money in the bank from. And so, I just, obviously it's still a risk, and you don't know how long how long it's going to take to get to get to a full client load, or, a full income again. But I think you have to have a plan. It's not responsible to go with like nothing, like, when, like, if you need it, like if you need money now or this month, and then like to put yourself in an environment where you don't know when that's coming, maybe not the most responsible thing. And I probably also wasn't completely responsible. Like I was probably a little overly optimistic, because I was able to do that consulting work for a long time, and I had other client work that came in, but not quite a full load at the very beginning. But I would say it took me about 15 months to get to what I consider to be a full client load for the first time.
And I'm realizing I may have gotten the chronology a little mixed up, because you came out of the unemployment, and that's where you started in a positive experience where you were in that
Yeah, that
healthcare
was a
startup.
positive experience. But it was like, so after a few years there, that's when then I joined another company as a COO, and that's when I voluntarily left.
Got it. And so you're deciding to voluntarily leave, go back into the unknown abyss. Now you were doing a little bit of work on the side. You were kind of getting ready for this, this new direction in your life. And then at one point you just said, okay, enough's enough. I'm going to make the leap. And you start out, as you said, you sort of hung up your shingle. You lined up 18 calls a week. How did you do that? Where were these calls coming from? How were you getting these leads?
Um, I can't remember. I just, so long ago, I just reached out to people, like anybody. I mean, I made, one thing I did was I just made a list of like everybody I knew who could possibly know, like who either might need what I did or could possibly know somebody who might need what I did. And I just made a list of, I don't know, 100, 110. I don't remember exactly how many it was, people. And I just like emailed, called, texted, reached out to all these people to set up a call. I, I, I reached out to, I figured I could probably get business, or I could probably get referrals from EOS implementers, who I didn't think I knew that many at the time, but I just reached out to a ton of them, and all the ones in my area, and I don't even remember how. I don't even remember how. I just reached out to a ton of them, and a bunch of them took my calls. I mean, some didn't, some did, and I just had, I don't know, 12, 18 calls a week at the first few months. And like, you talk to some people and they'd be like, oh, you know what? I think you should talk to so-and-so. And then that would like add somebody to the list. And I would talk to somebody and they're like, it would be sort of a dead end. So I would cross them off. And I just kind of built on the list and took off from the list. And I set up measurables for myself. I was like, okay, you got to have 30 reach outs a week. And I would count them. And I kept a scorecard, 30 minimum of 30 reach outs a week. I made another measurable. You have to make minimum of 2 outgoing referrals per week, like referring things to someone else, not to myself. just to like build my wallet, to build goodwill, to help people, to always keep my mind thinking about anybody that I'm speaking with, not just, hey, how can I get a referral, but like, what do they need? Like, just like listening, like, what do they need? Even if it's a florist, nothing to do with business. I mean, just anything that I can help people with. Just to get myself in the habit of that. So I just had a minimum of 2 per week. I mean, sometimes out of 6 per week outgoing referrals that I would do, but I just tried to do at least 2 per week, try to have at least 6 calls per week. I mean, sometimes more, but um, I just set up
So
measurables for myself to create accountability that I was at least taking the right actions to to be responsible towards building this business.
this is really great. I'm glad that this came up because this is a position that I think a lot of new, even longtime business owners find themselves in. They're like, how do I grow my business? Should I run Google ads? Should I run Facebook ads? What do I put a billboard up? And what I love about what you did is you were on the phone. You're calling, you're talking to people, you're probably setting up Zoom calls, and you're like, oh, who do I know in my network?
Well, this was
Let me just
pre-COVID. It was actually mostly on the phone at the time. Now all of my calls are on Zoom, even though COVID's like, over or whatever, but whatever. But yeah, it was just, getting on the phone mostly.
Yeah, and how were you coming up with this list? I want to talk about this a little bit because I think there's going to be a lot of business owners that are listening to this and they're like, "Hey, I want to grow my business or I'm just getting started with something. How do I get that first kind of snowball rolling down the hill?"
Yeah.
And I think what you did was great. You put in these accountability measures for yourself. I got to reach out to so many people. I loved the and I'm going to give referrals to so many people a week. So I'm sort of paying it forward. I'm putting that good energy out there. But talk a little bit more about how you made all this happen, how you were finding these initial people to have the conversations with.
Well, first of all, I would recommend people to read the book Power Connector by Judy Robinett. That is something I was referred to early-ish on, and I thought was a helpful framework. So it's Power Connector. I mean, there's a subtitle, but it's something or how to be a power connector, something like that by Judy Robinett. And that's a good resource. But how did I get that initial list of 100 is I just like, I'm Jewish. I just like thought through everybody in my synagogue. Okay. Like who has a business or who has a business or who is not just an employee, but like somebody that might know people who have businesses. Right. And I just listed there. I looked at the EOS implementers that I knew. I thought about, I don't remember, how did I come up with that? I don't know. I just like, I looked through my LinkedIn and just, I don't know. I just like looked through all my connections to see like, okay, who's a possible person to reach out to? Like, all the people I was connected to on LinkedIn. I just thought through, I don't know. I just thought through every place that I ever know anybody and had any connection. Uh, and, uh, and just put them all on a list. I just put it on a Google Doc. How to be a
We're
power. Yeah.
sh-
Yeah.
yeah, we're showing the book here on screen now. How to be a
Yeah,
power
everybody looking at
connector.
the screen.
Yeah, by Judy Robinett. Um, so that's how you brainstorm the list, right? Like, okay, think about people I
Yeah,
know in
so I
my
just
social
reached
circle,
out. So
my
like, hey, I
my
launched this
synagogue.
business. Yeah, I just reached out to people. Look, I just launched this business, doing a fractional COO, practice, and would you mind? I'd love to learn about your business. How I could be helpful to you, and and see if you know anybody that I could be helpful to. Whatever, I don't know. Just like I really don't even remember what I said, but I just reached out to people and, just said like, can we get on a call? And, some people ignored it. Some people said yes, even though like, it really was not that relevant in terms of like for that purpose, but just had calls with people. I definitely recommend if you record, like log all your calls somewhere, like if you can get a CRM or something, like HubSpot is a free version, like just do, put everything in HubSpot, free version. Now we're using Zoho, but I've been in my business and with a lot of users, but the because it's so meaningful to people when you can like remember what you spoke about, or like if you reach out to them the next month, you're like, hey, how was your daughter's graduation last month or whatever? You remember things about people. So definitely recommend like writing down and like logging all your calls so you know what you spoke about with people, so you can make things much more personal and you could remember people, and that makes an impact. That makes people feel good. But yeah, just do these calls. I mean, there's more that I would say. If somebody's starting off on their own, there's some other pieces of advice I always give people in that position, but which I could share if you want. But I mean, I don't know what direction you want the conversation to go, but
No, I think this is a great thread for us to pull at, because I talk to a lot of business owners. I've got a lot of friends who are business owners, and they sort of get stuck in this place of, how do I grow this business? How do I let people know what I'm doing? I feel weird reaching out to my friends, or, the guy I haven't talked to in 15 years that we used to work together. It feels sort of needy or something to kind of reach out. How did you work through that? Or were those even feelings that you experienced?
yeah, well, I'm more of a introvert, so I just had to make the choice. I just had to make the choice early on. Do I want to get a job, or do I want to just like bite the bullet and just embrace whatever is required for business development? And I just decided that among the decisions available to me at the time, I thought, I'd rather go through the discomfort of doing this and embrace that rather than go back to the risk of having all your eggs in one basket by working for one employer. And not always the most stable basket. I mean, depends on the situation, but the I think what anybody on their own needs to understand is that um, any solopreneur's business, whether you're a fractional executive of some kind, or a consultant, or a coach, or like whatever, or a graphic designer, anything, like whatever you are, if you're an independent freelancer or fractional or any kind of independent consultant, or any kind of solopreneurship, business development is part of your job description. Like it just is. If you think that you will just get referrals from your current clients, and you could just like do some big push at the beginning when you launch, and then get a bunch of clients, and then you'll just do such a good job for them that you'll just live on referrals forever and never have to do business development work again, you are fooling yourself. And you're going to find eventually those initial clients will run out. They will not have a sufficient number of referrals, even if you do have them, to keep you going full time, full time, however full time you want to be. So you'll end up in a state of famine and having to like do this big giant push again, like you did at the beginning, and you'll have a whole period of time where you're not making enough money. Maybe you had a certain period of time where you're making more money than you needed, and then now you're not making enough. And for however long that goes, and then you finally get full again, and you stop doing business development again, and the cycle repeats as feast or famine roller coaster, I call it. And that's not, I presume, like that kind of life. It's not happy, and most of the time, and it's not what you went on your own to live like that. So, and I just, I think anybody who wants to go out on their own or is out on their own needs to understand that business development is a long-term line item in your job description. And if you either love that or you're willing to embrace it, like I was, which I didn't love it, but I was willing to embrace it, then you could be successful. And if you're not willing to do that and embrace it long term, then you should get a job, because it's not going to work. If you think that you can outsource it, oh, I'll just get Google ads or Facebook ads, or one of the 50,000 people that emails me or texts me every day on LinkedIn that, I'll get you 50 client calls a week, or you 5 client calls a week with my algorithm on LinkedIn or whatever. Like it's fantasy, and preying on people's desire not to do business development, which is understandable. But it doesn't work. You can't outsource it, I don't believe. So whatever. It's a little bit of a rant, but like I think it's something that anybody who's either on their own or is thinking of being on their own needs to understand that that is part of your job description, and it will always be part of your job description. If you either love that or are willing to embrace it, you can be successful in your solopreneurship business. But if you're not, then you won't.
This has been a really good rant, Ben, because there are a lot of people who get stuck on this. And I think one of the best things you said is you raised your hand and you said, I am an introvert. Because most people, they look at a guy like you and they hear you tell that story about how you just reached out to your network and 18 calls a week. You're like, oh, well, that guy's wired for that. He's a natural salesman. He's an extrovert. He loves doing this. And you're like, no, I'm an introvert. I hated this. This was really uncomfortable for me. And I did it anyways. And not only did I do it in the beginning to get things started, but I continue to do it. It is part of my ongoing job description, right? So what does that business development look like for you now that you're several years into this and you've got an established client base and you are getting some referrals? What is it that you do to kind of keep that funnel full?
Well, yeah, it's definitely different now because I'm now the visionary in the business, like, and I I mean, now it's a little different. It's uh well, first of all, I hired a fractional CRO, fractional chief revenue officer, for the business, and a great guy heading up marketing and sales. So, and we've got a staff of 3 people mostly related to marketing activities. Uh, not full time, but like 3 part-time admin people that are working on marketing activities, social media, um, graphic design, whatever, these types of things, or editing on the podcast, these types of areas. So, and they report to him, not me. So, they're that stuff is getting done. He's sort of leading the charge, ensuring that all of the activities that we're doing are coordinated and related to a strategy. And so, so in terms of what I'm doing, uh, my uh, a lot of my business development activities are related to uh, continuing to nurture relationships, some of which now I've had for the last 4 years or whenever I started, right? So continuing to nurture relationships with these referral sources. um, I'm doing speaking or podcast, like I'm speaking with you right now. That's another activity. um, Sort of being a, you know I don't know, trying to be like, I wrote this book, trying to be like, be a thought leader, quote unquote, to use the pretentious term in the fractional executive space. And so that's a lot of what I'm doing. I am still a salesperson at this point. Although, I'm selling not my own services, but I'm selling the services of the members of my team. So we set up a sales process. We're always iterating that sales process. I was iterated again when our new CRO started in January. I mean, it was just, transforming it again, like always trying to learn, always trying to improve, do it better. And so I'm doing, getting good number of referrals from a lot of people. And just by persisting at these activities that I mentioned, initially it was, the relationship and the book and all these things and social media and the podcast and whatever. Over time, it's meant that I've developed a name. Like within the world that I live in, I'm a pretty well-known name. And that's, again, not because I'm a natural extrovert, like you pointed out, but it's just because of persistence at trying to do, to the best of what I understood at the time, to be the right activities of business development. And so as long as you keep doing with persistence the right activities, or, and when I say right, I mean like the right to the best of your ability to learn and know what the right activities are. I mean, there's no like perfect perfect thing. Then, and you do that with persistence, eventually it pays off. I mean, I would say when I got fully booked after 15 months, it was very sudden. It was just like I just got tons of leads, like in a relatively short time. I just started getting a lot, like the volume went way up after about 13 or 14 months in. And I think there's a term I would use, um, critical mass. I mean, I think just like you just keep putting stuff out there, you just keep doing activities, and people get to know you, and they don't make referrals the first time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time, but after 7, 8, 9 contacts and connections, and like they really know who you are, they really remember who you are, and like it just starts to stick. And there's just at some point all those activities, which is like you said with unemployment before, you usually worry, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to get a job again? It's the same thing with business development. Like, you feel like there's no results, nothing, it's not working. Is anything happening here? But I think that it has a cumulative effect. Like they say about bamboo, you water it for like a year, and then like in one day it grows 3 feet, and that's, it definitely was my experience, is that it was sort of like not like nothing, very little, very little, very little. And then like after a long time, like a lot of activity and a lot of results.
You had planted the seeds, you had watered them, you'd cultivated them, and then, yes, suddenly so many
Right.
things came into bloom all at once. What did those additional contact, those touch points look like for you? So you reached out the first time, hey, I'm starting this fractional COO business. Is there anything we can do for each other? Okay, great. Thank you. Let's stay in touch. But like you're saying, you kept in touch second time, third time, seventh time, eighth time before, they finally send somebody your way. What does that look like for you to keep in touch with that person in a way that is helpful but not annoying to them?
Yeah. Um, well, I mentioned before, one of my measurables was 30 reach outs a week. So, I would say that goes into that, that, a minimum of 30 reach outs a week. So, I mean, you like once you have that first call with somebody, put it, again, let's say you have that free version of HubSpot, right? Set up a task, right? That, set up your tasks in 30 days. I'm going to reach out to so-and-so, look back, do some by email. And these are not 30 reach outs like I copy paste the same message and send it 30 times. Like when I say 30 reach outs, whether it's a LinkedIn message or an email, it's something that is thoughtful. It's something that is supposed to be value add. So, like I mentioned, you log your call last month with somebody and they talked about such and such. And, so you like look up an article about that topic and, well, here's, I saw this article here. I thought of you, and then say why, like, just say something specific, or you make a referral, make that referral, or whatever, you just find some way to add value, connect them to somebody, just anything, even like ask about something that you guys spoke about the month before, and thinking about you, hope that thing went, hope that thing. I had a call with somebody who was a sort of prospect, but ended up like what they weren't really a target market client for us last week. And he said that, but he said that he was supposed to close on a business he was acquiring within a couple of days. So I was like, that was last week. I emailed him today, hey, did that, did that business end, did you end up being able to close last week? How'd that go? Whatever, but just that kind of thing. Like, just show people that you remember them, you thought about them, and it's just, one thing after another. They see you on social media, maybe you come up in their LinkedIn feed, whatever, just like, the no like trust cycle in sales.
I don't know. Can you explain that?
Well, in sales, there's a concept that there's a no like trust cycle. If you want people to buy your product, or you, if you're a consultant or whatever, that that if someone's going to make referrals to you, they've got to, or buy from you, they've got to, first of all, know who you are. Like they're going to just remember, just at the most basic level, just remember that you exist, like what your name is, just like remember that you exist. And it takes a certain amount of repetition, like, to, maybe reach out to somebody, have a call with them, maybe email them the next month, maybe have a second call with them. And eventually they'll like remember who you are. Like they'll know who you are. And then after a few repetitions, 3, 4, 5, 6 repetitions, whatever, then at some point they start to like you, hopefully. They're like, oh, you know what? That Ben guy, I like him. Like I have a good feeling, a positive feeling about you. But like I don't know enough about him necessarily to like risk my reputation on referring to him. But it seems like a good guy, like. And then ultimately, again, you have another couple calls over the next 6 months. Send them another resource, refer somebody to him or to her, and eventually we get to the point where, or maybe they hear about you from somebody else, whatever, they just, have enough contacts. And then after 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 contacts over the course of a year, they're like, you know what, I trust Ben, and then if you've talked about what you do and what kind of who your ideal client is during that time, then hopefully they'll be like, okay, like when that comes up, they'll be like, oh, Ben's the guy I think of when I think of that need, because we've talked about it a few times now. And at this point, I trust him. Like I've known him for a year now. He's not like a brand new person that just reached out to me. And so they just, for referral sources, just like for customers, there's that no like trust cycle that you have to go through. And it just takes a certain number of repetitions to get there. You meet somebody at a networking event, at your local networking event, or at an online networking event, just talk to somebody once, like it's perfectly pointless. Like you need
Who
that
is your
repetition.
ideal client, Ben?
Ideal client is business owners, of 10 to 250 people, typically between 5 and 50 million, who uh, who have like big dreams about what they want to accomplish, and they're just frustrated that they're hitting the ceiling on that because they don't, and they, they need somebody who's done it before, like to like help lead them and their team, like to actually accomplish what they want, and not keep hitting the ceiling anymore. But what I would say about ideal client is that before you reach out to all these people, these 100 people that you in the list that you put together, you have to know who your target. I mean, you or your listeners, I mean, have to know who their target market client is. Because if you don't have a clear idea of if you don't have a clear idea of who your target market is, then you're going to waste your time talking to people whose clients are not your target market. And you're going to think that you're doing a lot of good activities. You're doing a lot of good networking. You're doing a lot of good relationship nurturing. But if the people if the people you're talking to are not your target market client, or they're not, or they're not potential referral sources whose clients are your target market client, then you're wasting time and energy that you can't afford to waste. Um, and so that's all I would say, is that you have to be clear on what your target market client is before you do any of this, because otherwise you're going to end up just spinning your wheels and think that you're very busy, but you're not going to see results.
And so your ideal client you described to people was in, a certain revenue range. They're in a place where they're frustrated that they're sort of stuck in their growth. Is there any particular industries that you specialize in or try to stay away from?
No, we're, I mean, it's
Kind of
as a COO
agnostic
or
to that.
integrator, yeah, it's pretty agnostic. You can, 80% of businesses are the same, regardless of what their industry is, or whether it's professional services or sewer, cleaning out sewers. I mean, it's the same. Most of the principles are the same. But we do have members of the team, some, who tend to focus on manufacturing businesses, or who tend to focus on professional services businesses, um, and or technology businesses, etc.
And so when a customer chooses to work with you, obviously this is a pretty big decision. They've probably had conversations with other folks. You're not the only ones that they've talked to. When they decide to work with Wolf's Edge Integrators, why do they make that decision? What is it about you guys that sets you apart from others?
Uh, I mean, I would say the biggest thing is that been there, done that experience. I mean, you have a lot of people out there that maybe come from more of a project management or a manager background, or they're good at meeting facilitation and running meetings. Like, but I guess those who retain us are those who need like actual been there, done that experience, like actually somebody who's run a company, who's been as big as we are, bigger than we are, who's like done what we need to do, gone where we need to go before, and so they can help me get there, and not just facilitate my ideas or facilitate our meetings, but actually have that been there, done that experience. I would say is the biggest differentiator from anybody similar to us. I mean, you have some great solo practitioners, I think, in the space that are similar to that, but it's I would say that's probably the biggest unique.
Let's talk about your book for a second. I'm going to bring it up on screen here. What was the inspiration behind writing this book?
Well, the inspiration, interestingly, was I had a guest on my podcast about writing a book, and then I was thinking like, what would I write a book about? Like what what do I have? What do I have to write about? And I couldn't think of anything. And I thought of this. I thought of this idea, fractional leadership. And I and then I thought, oh, you know what? It's such a basic concept. It's like so many fractional executives out there. I don't know how many books there are already on this topic. But let me just check. Let me Google it. Let me look on Amazon. Let me look at, and I just started searching fractional executive, fractional leadership, and there's no other book. I searched fractional CFO, fractional COO, fractional CMO, fractional CTO, fractional CIO, and I just started like church, or like outsource COO, outsource CFO. I just started searching every possible term I could think of, because like I wasn't finding anything. I was like, what? There's no books. I mean, there's tons of like, web articles out there, a few mainstream media articles here and there, but very little. Actually got featured a few months ago in the New York Times myself. Uh, but it was, it's I just realized there's nobody had written about that. Like nobody had written a book on this topic before to like introduce business owners to this concept. So it's like, okay, nobody else did it. I'll do it. So then
Yeah.
so I wrote the book.
And here's the, well, I don't have a New York Times account here, but here's the article that they read about you in the New York Times. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So fractional leadership, landing executive talent you thought was out of reach. Quite a few ratings, all very positive. It's like a great book if this is a space that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Has this been
Tried to make it a good introduction for any business owner. It's geared towards a business owner to like lay out, hey, what is it? What are all the objections that you probably have in your mind about it? How does it work? How much does it cost? How long does it last? What are the objections? Who's it for? Who's it not for? And then I have chapters in the second part on like, okay, now let's go to CFO. How does fractional CFO work? How much does it cost? How does it work? Like, what should you look for? Fractional CMO, fractional sales officer, or VP of sales or whatever, fractional COO, fractional integrator, CFO, CIO, CTO, COO, and kind of lay out each one, kind of how does it work, and try to tell a bunch of stories, interviewed a bunch of people, share their stories, and tried to be the best introduction I could make it to those who want to understand whether they could utilize a fractional executive to like solve their problem or their gap on their leadership gap in their company.
What was something you learned about yourself writing that book, Ben?
I like to be told how to do something and then I could just do it. I found a course called the 30-day writing challenge by a guy named Joshua Sprague. I don't know if you want to put that on the thing also. It's a good resource. Joshua, have you seen this? Joshua Sprague 30-day writing challenge. Just like you sign up for it. It's like $100. You sends you once a day for 5 days a week for 30 days, which is about 6 weeks, sends you an email. Like, okay, what do you do that day? Like towards writing your book. And yeah, there you go. There it's on the screen. But and so I just got the email every day. I just did exactly what it said. I set aside a certain amount of time every day, did what the email said. I give myself a couple extra weeks at the end and then finished the book in 8 weeks. I mean,
that's terrific. So you followed Joshua's script to a T and
I
kind of walked you through the whole process.
I just followed it. I like that. I like, just like, I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. Like someone figured out how to do this. Like, let me just do it. Like with business development also, like I just asked around. I asked people, how do you do business development? How do you get clients? What are like, this, it's all the stuff I shared. I mean, it's sort of an amalgam of just asking a lot of people, what do you do? How do you do this? And then just to the best of my knowledge about what it takes to succeed, I just tried to do it.
And let's talk about your podcast for a second. Was this also an idea for business development? How did this idea come about?
Yeah, not directly, like not like I thought, hey, someone's gonna listen to my podcast and like call me up, hey, can I hire you? But but it was, I guess the two main things that I wanted to do with the podcast are the two main things I wanted to do with the podcast are, number one, give me something that I could give people to give back to them. Right. So that I could like, oh, I want to talk to this person who might be a potential referral source for me. Well, let me give something to give them. I'm not just asking for referrals. I want to give something like, let me promote you. Let me give something to like help me connect to those people by having me be able to have something to give them in return. And so I would say that's one thing. And the other element is just to give me an excuse. Like if there's somebody that like maybe wouldn't have a reason to talk with me, but like I would like to learn from, or I would like to be connected to, And then it just, again, allows me to like, hey, let me get your message out there. And it just gives them a reason to talk with me. Like Marcus Sheridan from They Ask You Answer. Like, would he have gotten on a call with me? Like if I just said, hey, I want to talk to you about your book and, and your teachings that They Ask You Answer. Like, no, I like, but whatever. He said, he was saying something on LinkedIn, and I argued with him, and I said, but like, I'd love to hash it out with you. Let me have you on my podcast to like talk it over, or, I had Mark O'Donnell, the visionary of US Worldwide, was it Jonathan Shankman, who wrote Faster Than Normal, a book about ADHD and entrepreneurs. And, just came on the podcast, like, whatever. It's like a nice way to like get connected to people and like learn from them who I wouldn't have necessarily had a reason to talk with me if I had just said that I was interested in talking with them.
And for people listening to the podcast, what can they expect to gain from it? What do you kind of dive into?
Well, every episode is a target market audience of people who have a business, like, again, 10 to 250 person business, not like a solopreneur, not really geared towards solopreneurs, and not geared towards big corporate businesses, not geared towards personal stuff, like just like people with entrepreneurial businesses, almost any topic that would be immediately useful to them and would just have like usable information. That is sort of the theme. It's sort of a very broad theme, but that's the theme of the show. And try to create a win-win for people.
That's the name, win-win. Well, win-win, the Win-Win Podcast, an entrepreneurial community. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. Several ratings, all 5 stars. Very practical for an entrepreneur, a business owner. Lots of hands-on advice that they can take from the episodes. Ben, I want to shift gears now and talk about something that's oftentimes a bit difficult for most people to talk about, but I think this is where some of the real meat on the bone comes from, is that people look at us as business owners, as leaders, and they think, oh, that guy, he was born to do that. He was born to lead. He's just got success running through his vein. I could never do that. I'm not built like that. What they don't see are sort of the hard times that are going on behind the scenes of these successful enterprises that we run. I'm curious to hear one or more of your stories, a real challenge that you've gone through professionally that you thought was just going to tear things apart, and how you overcame it.
Well, I did have one very hard time that went on where I lost my whole leadership team.
Wow.
In one day.
Wow.
And it was
How many people was that?
2 people.
2 people.
Well, it wasn't like one person, right? But like,
yeah,
one person left in one day. No, but the 2 people in one day, and it was a very scary time. Like, it could like make the whole team feel like a feeling of instability, and just very scary, and feeling bad, or just like self-doubt about myself, like, is something wrong with me, or is something wrong with what we're doing here? And so very scary. And I just, all I did was I just took like an immediate approach of action. Like, what are the next right actions that I could focus on? I just focus on those actions. I think that what it came down to, what I learned from it, is the concept of alignment, and that there had been some different alignment that had developed with those 2 individuals who were, like, I guess had like a different philosophy, like had sort of developed over time, a different philosophy about the direction the business should go in that was, starting to get different from my own. And so I think ultimately it was a very healthy thing that they, that they chose to leave. And but just tried to take the right actions. I actually, we considered, I talked to and interviewed and had the team meet a number of fractional CROs, or, potential people to take over the marketing and sales role. And but the one that we ended up hiring, I actually had a call with like that same day. Like I like texted him, like I had, known him for a couple of years. I texted him and I had texted him and like we had a call. I was like flying off. I was like flying off to strategic coach workshop in Chicago. I talked to him in the airport, like, that same day. And then, he continued the process, whatever. It ended up working out eventually. And then ended up elevating another member of my team to become integrator, to become COO of our own business internally. Um, and I look, still we're still growing, we're still working, but I would just say that it feels like the team, the leadership and the leadership team are just so much more aligned and just so much more like a laser focused on, I guess, who we are and where we're going than what we were before. And there's just been transformations also that we've been doing on the sales and marketing side that just from that fresh perspective, I think that was, that I'm very, very grateful for. Like that we, if things hadn't changed, we wouldn't be doing now, that we are doing because of that change. And just like with losing that job, however many years ago, sometimes we don't have the guts to change things because they're, even with some discomfort, there's still too much comfort, and too much risk in making a big change. And sometimes it's only when we're torn, when the old was forced away from us, was torn away from us, and we have no choice but to figure out what to do next, then we end up, and I've seen multiple times, I've ended up in a much better place than where I would have just continued for years like it was before, if that change hadn't been, forced upon me.
But you can look back now and say, wow,
Yeah,
that's a
in
good thing.
retrospect.
We're in a better place. And how long ago was that those two folks
That
left from the
was
leadership
that
team?
was that was last fall.
Okay, this is still pretty recent. This is
Yeah,
less than a
about
year
that.
ago.
Yeah,
And for you
yeah.
to kind of come through the dark tunnel already and be able to look back and say, man, we're in a better place now that was forced upon us, that happened. But talk me through those first days and weeks where it looks like it's got to feel like the sky is falling, right? Like
Yeah, I
these are
feel
two
like I
key
got punched,
people.
I feel like I got punched in the gut. I just feel, I feel I'm a person who feels tension in my stomach. I just had like a negative, like I just had like a bad feeling in my stomach all the time. And, I think not the best moment, but I just would just say to myself from time to time, like, I don't want this. Like, I don't want this to be happening, but it did.
And,
And
and how do you work through that? What were some of the coping skills that you learned, that you leaned on?
like I said before, I think it's just about taking action. You just say, like, all I could do is like focus on what's the next right action and just do the next right action and just focus on that. Like, 'cause what's the alternative? You're gonna roll up in a ball and like just do nothing. Like, that's not a life. So you just gotta ask what's the next right action? I use a notepad, like I wrote down, I just asked I would sit down for like an hour and like write down questions like, like why is this happening? What did I learn from this? And then I had to like immediately like go and like talk to everybody in the team because I want to like I want to be the one to tell everybody myself and also and also reassure and like what's happening next and whatever, just like kind of stabilize. Um and so we just like taking notes. Okay, what do I tell people? Like what do I want to talk about? It's just like I don't know. I use a notepad to try to clarify thoughts and clarify what the right next steps are, and then just take those next right steps and rinse and repeat. Just always focus on the next right thing.
Well, I think you hit upon something really powerful there, because I think that in so many aspects of our lives where we get stuck on something, where something bad has just happened to us, and I think it is sort of a natural reaction to just want to like curl up in a ball and suck your thumb and lay under the covers and hide from it all and hope it just, you wake up and it is just all changed on its own and gone away. And we've all lived long enough to know that that's not how the world works, right? And so you sat down with your notebook and you were like, okay, what are some things I can do here? Like, let's make the list, let's brainstorm the list. let's prioritize it, and then let's just take action. It's one foot in front of the other, right? It's baby steps to start with. It is always just, what is that next right action? That's exactly how you played it out.
Next right action. That's it.
Well, tell me about personal interest. What kind of passions do you have outside of work?
Well, I guess outside of work right now, the biggest things are I just started trying out cycling. So experimenting with that. I did
Like in a racing kind of environment, or just
not
like is it
racing,
a
but
form of exercise?
athletic. Yeah, but athletic, not just leisurely.
Okay.
And so yes, I've been doing a Nordic track bike 5 days a week in the mornings, and then recently started going out in real life on a bike recently. Did my longest ride so far, which is not very impressive for people in that world, but got up to 24 miles yesterday, so that was a good one. Getting up, slowly. I also been writing books for the rabbi of the synagogue that I belong to. So uh, I've published so far 5 books for him. I completely wrote the first few, and then now I've started to get other volunteer writers, and now I focus on more of the editing and publishing, and a little bit of writing, but mostly editing and publishing.
Are these
So I've been,
religious oriented books
yeah,
that you're
religious
writing?
oriented
Yeah.
books. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you're using that
I've
same
published
framework
5
that you
so
showed
far.
before?
No,
Okay.
it's very different. Those are not my ideas, so very different, but yeah, sort of based on lectures and turning things into book form in a format that makes sense. But that's another, yeah, working on a 6th one now, but that's sort of another
Clearly, your faith is very
pastime.
important to you. That's come up multiple times. You're writing books for your rabbi. Did a lot of networking at your synagogue. So your faith is an important part of
Well,
your life.
because yeah, I mean, like you have to think, where do you know people, right? Just like wherever you happen to know, like wherever you know people, that's I think when you start off in the entrepreneurial world, you have to start off wherever you happen to know people, like whatever that is.
Um, Ben, what's something you wish you could teach a younger version of yourself? Maybe the 20-year-old version of Ben.
Ah, the the fact that life is a winding road. I mean, talk about when you're going through something hard, how we talked about before, how the focus just has to be on the next right thing or the next right action. And I would just say that all you could do as a young person trying to find your way is like try to listen to yourself and where your interests are and what you're good at and what you're interested in, and follow that, whether it's in school or in jobs, and just try to do the best you can at it. But like there is likely not going to be any direct line between whatever you start doing and wherever you end up. Because it certainly was not with me. I majored in psychology in college. I wanted to do social work, therapy, and then ended up wanting to become a rabbi, and worked, and studied for another 3 years after college, and then went and got a job at a Jewish educational organization in Des Moines, Iowa for 3 years, and did that. Then came back to New York, decided I want to try real estate, try to find a way to make money without having to go back to school. So I tried doing industrial real estate brokerage for a few years, and then went to law school at night, worked full time during the day, at the beginning in real estate, then in like law firms. As I worked full time, went to law school at night. Thank God I did well in law school, got this great law job, for a few years, been a few years as an attorney. Then after 5 years, we talked about this unemployment period and got in the entrepreneurial world, which who would have ever thought that? But, but the background of the background of teaching and the background of like legal analysis and writing and attention to detail, and and just that whole legal perspective on business, and being GC. The truth is that guy probably would not have hired me at that business that I helped build if I hadn't been an attorney. It's a part of the interesting story, but and then now I built a business, and now I've got this entrepreneurial background, and then that leads to something else. So like now here I am all these years later with, what does that have to do with psychology or social work or real estate? You just never know where your path is going to take you. But I believe that Providence is going to set it up that, even if you've done things that seem completely unrelated to each other, that there's some unique combination that like nobody else is going to have because they didn't go through that weird winding journey, that is going to serve you very well and put you uniquely placed in the world to do something and make a very unique contribution. That would not have been possible if you hadn't gone through that path that made absolutely no sense and nobody would have ever planned in advance. And so like all you could do as a young person, I think, is like just listen to what you're interested in and listen to what you're good at. Try to be mindful of that and choose a path based on that. And then just have faith that it's all going to work out. And even if there's some major changes along the way, that cumulatively somehow is going to put you in a very unique place that you could have never imagined in advance.
A long and winding road indeed.
Yes.
Certainly, if you're any example to be learned from there. I've just got one more question for you, Ben. But before I ask it, I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you. I've got your website up on the screen here, wolfsedgeintegrators.com. Is this the preferred method for people to find you?
Yes, definitely check that out. You can also get some good resources there if you go to wolfsedgeintegrators.com/resources. There is you can get a free chapter of my book, by the way, which is more than what you can get on Amazon. You can get a free chapter of the book there, chapter 1 of Fractional Leadership, Landing Executive Talent You Thought Was Out of Reach. Yeah, there it is. If you're looking at the screen, it's there on the screen. There's a roadmap that is a variation on what our own COOs do in our firm that you could get to use that roadmap in your own business with a video guide. It's one of the other resources there, but wolfsedgeintegrators.com/resources. And hopefully there's something there that can be useful to you.
That's terrific.
Well, there's also a contact us page, or you could book a discovery call if you might need a fractional COO. But one way or another, you could definitely get in touch with us through the website or through my LinkedIn.
Great. A lot of great free and helpful resources here on the site. Definitely check it out, folks. Okay, last question for you, Ben. Curious where you see your industry or maybe your business in particular evolving in the next 5 years. Where do you see it going?
I mean, business in general, there's five, as of 2019, there's 5.38 million businesses just in the United States with between 10 and 250 people in them. And 5.38 million businesses. So if you assume there's probably 100 million people at least, 140 million people at least in those businesses, again, just in the United States, not even considering the fact that those businesses similarly all over the world, that most of whom, 90% of people who start businesses are not serial entrepreneurs. It's their first business or it's their only business that they've gotten to that scale before. So I think that the need for fractional COOs who actually have experience and can help 3 or 4 businesses at a time, right? Not limited to only working in one place, I think is only going to grow more and more as people become more aware of this kind of solution. So I think it's going to grow hugely. My goal is to be, within 3 years, to be 50 people in 140 companies that we're helping at a time. If we are helping 140 companies at a time, that's about 5,600 employees in those 140 companies. 5,600 people, like 5,600 mortgages, 5,600 sets of kids and spouses and partners and parents whose lives can be touched by having people that are, in a healthy business and that are not miserable and not like all stressed out because things are not working well. And so I think we can touch a lot of lives, and that's just in 3 years. Obviously 5 years, 10 years. I think we could do another 10x of that, we do 500 team members and 14,000 companies, but I don't know, 1,400 companies, I guess that would be, sorry.
Lots of fun stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate the opportunity.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.